What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some interesting news about Starfinder Afterlight, the upcoming CRPG for, of course, the Starfinder universe, which is a sister game basically to Pathfinder that essentially shares the same rule set, which allows you to swap things back and forth. But it was announced not all that long ago that Starfinder Afterlight was a thing that was happening and that it was getting a Kickstarter alongside an early access release in 2026. So, happy to be bringing you more information about it. You see, roughly a week or so before this video went up, I was invited to essentially like a press briefing for this game, as its Kickstarter is launching exactly when this video goes live, and they offered up a bunch of details, of course, so we could go over them, as I honestly got answers to quite a few of the questions I had previously, which was important, but also so people could have this information potentially before backing that Kickstarter project. Now, I want to kick this off by stating what I usually say when Kickstarter comes up, which is that I do not endorse Kickstarters. I cover this stuff for informational purposes, but recommending that you do or don't do anything with Kickstarter is just not something I am willing to do, as there are simply far too many variables, and that is ultimately a decision you've got to make for yourself. But I am, of course, happy to share all of this information with you guys, which is naturally what we're doing here. So, first off, one of the questions I had when this was initially announced was what was the deal with both the Kickstarter and the early access? Well, we got our answer, and it's probably more or less what you would expect. Basically, the game is funded to a point, like they know pretty much what they are doing, what the scope of that is as a base, and as a result, that is going to be happening no matter what. But Kickstarter, as an option there, is hopefully going to allow them to expand their budget and to work on some other features. One thing in particular that they mentioned is expanding the voice acting. Right now, it looks like they're going for the sort of half and half approach we've seen in some CRPGs, where like the main portion of it, or the main quest that is going to be voice acted, and then as much side stuff as they can manage. But right now they certainly can't do all of it, and they would like to expand that out as just one singular example. They've also mentioned things like modding support, that kind of thing. So that's basically what the Kickstarter is for. Early access, on the other hand, is basically going to give them the opportunity to invite community feedback. Obviously, it will include the people that backed it on Kickstarter, as you would expect. That way they can refine the game and flesh out options and things as it moves forward, as what they are aiming for is basically a very reactive and replayable CRPG, which, as many people know, is not an easy thing to do. Right now, the state of the game is that they are in pre-alpha. In roughly Q2 of 2026, which is what they're aiming for, they plan on moving to early access, with a full release hopefully planned for 2027. That stuff out of the way, let's actually go ahead and talk about the game itself and some interesting details I was able to glean. Another question I had from when this was announced was what the story was about, because Afterlight is not a module or an adventure path for Starfinder. That is to say, a preset story, basically. And that is because the game is going to be an original story from the developers, Epic Tellers Entertainment. However, they were willing to shine a bit of a light on what this is. You see, Afterlight isn't just the title, it's an event. They didn't mention exactly what it was, but the gist of it is that you have some awareness via an experience you had that the Afterlight is coming, which is a like galaxy extinction level event that you and a ragtag group of heroes plan on stopping, which is the overall goal of it. How you go about doing that, who you take along the way, etc., is where the replayable portion comes in, but it looks like one of the potential companions, one Captain Callie, is the one who's going to be chasing this down before you get involved, and you get thrown into the mix after seeing the event for yourself. They're aiming for a 40 to 60 hour experience that is, again, replayable via things like all the companions and stuff that we're about to talk about. Some information on companions. They are optional. They can leave you. You don't have to have them with you at all. You can take some of them, but not all of them, and I would imagine most anything in between. I'm going to go over most of them, but there is at least one more to come that has not actually been announced yet, but a few just interesting tidbits first. Companions are going to be able to be respec freely, meaning that you don't have to stick with whatever their base class is or anything like that. You can just turn them into whatever you want to turn them into for the sake of party balance, so that's going to be a thing. Now, I didn't really get any information about character creation, probably still a little too soon for that just yet, but the goal of it is to essentially have, both for your companions and yourself, all of the base Starfinder classes available in the game, of course. Now, there's a lot of these. Starfinder's been around for a while, and while they are using the 2E edition, there's still a lot of stuff there. They also want your classes and things like that to play a role in dialogue, so it will obviously add to that replayability. But what's more, this customization also includes things like the sort of baseline playable races, best I can tell, but there are one or two that I have not gotten confirmation of there. But it sounds like the goal is to get the base Starfinder core rulebook in. Now you might jump straight to multi-classing from there. It's handled a little differently in 2e than you might be used to. Multi-classing in Pathfinder 2e and Starfinder is handled through like feats and stuff. So they were a little vague on how much would actually be there, so I don't have a clear answer for you, but just based on the rule system, if you're expecting it to work the way even the Pathfinder video games did, or Baldur's Gate 3 as an example, that is not the way the system really works. Curiously enough, they did also make mention of a Skittermander thing in-game. They want to make them something that lives up to what their sort of out-of-game internet discussion might actually live up to, I guess you could say, which means we're not getting a Skittermander companion, but they are in the game in some way that is supposed to be important. Now, when it comes to companions that have actually been released, we've got Cole of the Vesk, Tycho of the Isoki, which are the little rat-like guys, Lou323, which is an android assassin under most situations with a very over-the-top personality to match. We've got Sterling, the Solarian, back from the dead and harnessing the powers of black holes and the sun and the like. And then, of course, Captain Kali, who gets the whole thing started when we witness the Afterlight event. So all of these companions will be romanceable. There's also going to be other companions that are romanceable. They left this a little bit vague, but it looks like they're keeping it pretty open with the romances and stuff, and they want that to be a big part of the game for people. And to that end, probably a good time to mention that they've got Neil Newbon directing the voice acting, which has been known for a while, but just so you know. And then from here, just a few other odds and ends to wrap up this video. In Act 1, it was stated that you get access to sort of like warehouse/bar that serves as your base of operations, but that is temporary. Part of Act 1 is you gaining access to a ship that you're going to need to get your crew of delinquents, let's say, moving and chasing down this threat. In order to do that, once that is done, you'll then have access to that ship, which will serve as your base from there moving forward. Now, something that was curious here is that it was asked whether or not there would be ship-to-ship combat like in space, and the answer was no. However, there will be like boarding parties and things of that nature that should come up pretty naturally during the story in one form or another, so hopefully that preemptively answers a few questions in relation to how that works. And last but not least, when it comes to introducing the systems to the player, they have said that they are trying their best in order to do that, and they're looking at it from a few different angles in terms of like tutorialization and conveyance. And obviously, I imagine this is something that will have to be worked on as they go, but hopefully, if all does go well, this will be a decent introduction to Starfinder and the 2e rule set as an example for a lot of people, and they won't have to know too much ahead of time in order to jump in, which should make for an interesting note in terms of my actual job personally, as I've spent a not insignificant amount of time covering these types of games and helping people play them, but I imagine that's more for me than everybody else. With that in mind, that's basically everything I gleaned from this particular presentation and everything, and hopefully that gives you some information to either simply look forward for this game for, or about the Kickstarter itself, that kind of thing. Either way, as this game continues to develop and proceed down that journey through Kickstarter Early Access and eventually its release, I will obviously continue to be covering it the entire way through, as I do with most CRPGs, really. But that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope the video was helpful. If you're looking forward to any of that, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Be sure to let me know how you feel about it down in the comments, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.